All right, so in the last video, we saw a couple of questions for some practice. Here's the first one. The height of the demand curve at any quantity can be thought of as blank. The correct answer is A, the willingness to buy. Okay, so the height of the demand, the demand curve represents the willingness to buy at that quantity. And for the second question, the difference between the price that the good was sold at and the minimum price the firm would have accepted for the good is called the producer surplus. Answer C. All right, so now we're going to think about our second big question. When is a market efficient? So to begin, we're going to think about how economists measure social welfare. Well, the well-being or welfare of society is just what we call total surplus, which is just the sum of consumer and producer surplus. So just adding those two together, since they constitute both sides of the market, if we add them together, we get total societal welfare or total societal surplus. So again, what we're really talking about here with consumer and producer surplus are the gains from trade. So we learned about gains from trade earlier in the semester. This is how we can measure them and put a number to them and compare them. And they are in dollar values for us. So these values, these consumer and producer surpluses, represent the gains expressed as a dollar value to gains from trade. So if we're talking about market efficiency, what we're talking about is maximizing the gains from trade. When we maximize the gains from trade, we have an efficient market. There are no losses, deadweight loss, as we'll talk about in a little bit. But basically what we're able to show is how surplus is maximized in markets when there's no government intervention. And anytime that we have maximum total surplus, then that is considered to be an efficient allocation. An efficient allocation is one in which resources maximize total surplus. So graphically, this is what it looks like in our supply and demand model, right? We've talked about how equilibrium in our supply and demand model is efficient. And when we talked about that, what we're basically saying is that total surplus is maximized. Consumers get as much benefit from the market as possible. Suppliers get as much benefit from the market as possible. And so when that happens, we've maximized total surplus, and that is efficient. All right. Now we can look at this and think about, consumer A, right? So consumer A has a willingness to buy of $7. They'd be willing to pay up to $7 for slices of pie. And so the consumer A would have a $3 consumer surplus. And then as we move down the demand curve, each consumer surplus gets smaller because each additional consumer's willingness to pay is getting lower. So they don't benefit as much. Those with low willingness to pay don't benefit as much as those with high willingness to pay. And then, consumers, we have a similar story. Those with lower willingness to pay, willingness to sell benefit more than those with higher willingnesses to sell. But in any case, here's what an efficient market looks like in terms of total surplus. So these triangles, right? The areas of these triangles are surpluses. So unfortunately, we're not given intercepts here for the supply and demand curves. If we were, then we could calculate exactly the size of them. Unfortunately, we're not given the intercepts, so we can't do that. Now, here's a question. Suppose that this market did not achieve equilibrium, and so maybe slightly less than 6 million slices of pie were sold, right, at B here. at point B. What would that mean if we didn't achieve equilibrium and we only sold up to point B quantity of pies? Well, it basically means that the surpluses on both sides of the market, consumer and producer surplus, for those last however many million units, they wouldn't be traded, and so there would be no gain from them. So that area that's outlined by the green box or the green triangle, that area would be lost if the market didn't sell 6 million units. It only sold however many units are at B there. Okay, so that's something called deadweight loss. If the market doesn't achieve equilibrium for some reason, then there is going to be a loss of surplus, and we call it deadweight loss.